I was holding flowers. That's the part one keep coming back to over and over like a song stuck on repeat. I wasn't holding suspicion or doubt or some kind of smoking G***N, I was holding flowers. A cheerful, dumb little bouquet of sunflowers and blue delphinium because Mallory once told me those colors reminded her of our honeymoon in Santa Barbara. I'd picked them up from the florist by her office, tied with twine and wrapped in paper, thinking it would be a sweet surprise. Something innocent. Something good. She had texted me earlier that day, long day, but I'll be home early, Reheart. I didn't ask questions. I never really did. That was our thing, space and trust. She said she hated micromanagers and I'd never wanted to be one of those husbands who asked where, when, with who, like a parole officer. She was my wife. That should have been enough. So when I decided to surprise her at the firm's quarterly mixer, I felt excited. Nervous even, like I was showing up for a first date all over again. I coordinated with one of her younger coworkers, Daniel, who told me they were hosting it in the event space upstairs, plenty of champagne, a little jazz trio, the whole corporate bonding experience. He said I could slip in through the back stairwell to keep it low-key. She'll love it, he said, giving me a conspiratorial wink as he buzzed me in. Funny how someone can be right and wrong at the exact same time. The building was familiar, sterile. I'd been there before, holiday parties, one charity fundraiser. The place always smelled like printer toner and lemon oil furniture polish. I remember walking up the stairs two at a time, heart-thumping, rehearsing something clever to say when I saw her. You look too good to wait until you got home. Or maybe thought I'd steal you away before someone else did. That last one feels especially bitter now. On the second floor, I spotted the conference room, the same one where she had once taken me on a tour of her new promotion, where she'd stood in front of the glass wall and told me with this glow in her eyes, "This is the room where I'm going to make things happen." She had kissed me right there, said she could see her whole future from that view. I never thought I'd see what I saw in that room. Through the glass, I caught them. Mallory. On her knees. My boss, Harold Jennings, standing in front of her, looking like he'd just been slapped by God himself. She wasn't even fixing her posture. Her hands were still on his belt. Her hair was a mess. Her lipstick, bright red, I realized, was smeared in a way that left no doubt. And me? I just stood there. At first, I thought maybe I was wrong. That I'd misunderstood something. That it was some horrible, explainable thing. Maybe she dropped something. Maybe he was helping her. Maybe this was an absurd misunderstanding. But then she turned her head and saw me through the glass. And she froze. Her eyes widened, full of panic, guilt, whatever cocktail of emotions bursts into someone's chest when their lies come crashing down in real time. She looked down, then back up. Her lips moved. I think she said my name, but it was like I was underwater. Everything muffled. Distant. Then, as if she thought she could put the world back together, she reached out and opened the door. She stepped forward, still on her knees, grabbing the bouquet from my hand like it was a lifeline. Like the act of taking those flowers could undo everything I'd just seen. "Logan," she whispered. I didn't wait for the end of the sentence. I didn't want to hear whatever version of reality she was about to invent. I turned. Walked back toward the stairwell. Daniel was there, still smiling like this was part of the plan. "Did you find her?" he asked. I didn't say a word. I just kept moving. My heartbeat was too loud. My throat felt tight. Every step away from that room felt like peeling off skin. I made it down to the lobby, walked right past the security guard, out into the cold night air. It was darker than I remembered. Sharper. Like everything had edges now. The flowers were gone. I didn't even remember letting go of them. The thing is, you always imagine that if something like this ever happens to you, if your partner cheats, if your whole life is suddenly turned inside out, you'll react big. You'll yell. You'll smash something. You'll demand answers. But that's not how it happened for me. I was quiet. Hollow. Something inside me cracked then, but it didn't make a sound. No drama. No explosion. Just a quiet little shatter like a dropped glass in the next room. I kept walking until I found my car, sat inside with the door open, just breathing. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stared at the steering wheel for 10 minutes, maybe more, while my mind tried to rearrange the facts into some shape that hurt less. I thought about how she had kissed me goodbye that morning. About how I'd told her I'd pick up dinner. About how she smiled and said, "You always take care of me." And all I could think was, I didn't see it. I didn't see any of it. By the time I started the engine, I didn't know where I was driving. I just knew I couldn't go home. Not yet. That house wasn't a home anymore. Not when I could still taste her goodbye kiss and picture her lips, those same lips smeared across someone else's skin. Especially his. Harold Jennings. Of all people. The man who shook my hand with fake sincerity at every quarterly review. The one who toasted us at our wedding and made a joke about keeping the fire alive. The guy who sent me an email just last week saying I was in line for a promotion. And now he was, what? Sleeping with my wife? I gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. The betrayal didn't feel real yet. Not in full. It would come in pieces, I knew that even then. A slow drip of realization. But that night, it was just noise in my skull. A high-pitched whine of disbelief and rage and something else I still can't name. All I knew was that the woman I loved, the one I thought I knew better than anyone, had looked me in the eyes while holding flowers she didn't deserve, and I had walked away. Maybe that was the worst part. That I didn't stay and demand answers. That I didn't scream. That I didn't even tell her to go to hell. I just left. And part of me hated myself for it. After that night, I didn't explode. I didn't pack a bag or file for divorce or call anyone. I didn't even mention it to Mallory. I just observed. Silence became my armor. An observation, my wee *p***n. Something shifted in me that night, not like a flip being switched, more like a slow, irreversible slide. I became someone I didn't recognize, quieter, more calculated. Every detail, every moment became evidence. I wasn't trying to catch her anymore. I already had. Now, I just needed to understand how long I'd been living in fiction. That following morning, she acted normal. Made coffee. Hummed along to her morning playlist. Told me she had a meeting at 9 and probably wouldn't be home until late again. She kissed my cheek on her way out like nothing had happened. Her lipstick didn't match the one from the night before. I stared at the closed front door for a long time after she left. The house was quiet, too quiet. And that silence echoed with all the things I'd ignored for months. Like how she used to be clumsy with her phone. She'd leave it charging in the kitchen overnight, forgotten. But lately, it never left her side. Not even when she went to the bathroom. New password. Different ringtone. Notifications hidden. One night, I caught her flipping it face down when I walked into the room. She laughed it off. Habit, she said. Or how her wardrobe had changed. She'd always been stylish, but lately it had gone from smart chic to lingerie model on a layover. Designer blouses I didn't recognize. Undergarments that showed up in the laundry but never in our bedroom. I found a bra one night, lace, Deepberg *NY. Still had the tag on it. She told me she bought it for a friend's bachelorette trip. That trip never happened. She also started wearing perfume again. Not the soft, floral one I bought her last Christmas. This was new, sharp, musky, seductive. I once got into the car after her and the smell was so strong it clung to the air like fog. When I asked about it, she shrugged. You know how the department store ladies are. I let one spray me. Right? And then there were the business trips. They used to be quarterly. Then they became monthly. Then somehow bi-weekly? Always short notice. Always to cities where her company had no office. I knew because I checked. One time, she claimed she was visiting her sick aunt in Albuquerque. I sent flowers. Her aunt posted vacation pictures from Naples, Florida that same weekend. Every inconsistency was like a loose thread. And once you start pulling, everything unravels. Her routines changed too. She stopped watching our shows, told me she couldn't keep up. The book she kept on the nightstand hadn't moved in weeks, but she claimed she'd just finished it. She stopped joining me for Sunday pancakes, even though she used to love making them together. Too many carbs, she said, without looking up from her phone. And yet, she kept ordering pasta on nights she ate late. One morning, I noticed a small dent in her rear bumper. When I asked her about it, she acted surprised. Must have happened in the parking garage. No big deal. But the story changed when she told it again to a friend on the phone. I clipped a mailbox turning out of a driveway. I never asked which driveway. Photos started surfacing online, corporate events, team-building weekends, galas. I'd see her tagged in pictures she never mentioned attending. Always dressed up. Always smiling. Sometimes with Harold in the frame. Too close. His hand grazing her lower back. His eyes on her like he already owned her. I once noticed she came home with a paper wristband, the kind you get at exclusive lounges or hotel rooftop bars. When I asked, she blinked and said, "Oh, that? Some happy hour thing." Didn't realize I still had it on. She tossed it in the trash like it was nothing. But I dug it out later. It had the name of a private event, one her company wasn't listed on. Then there was the cologne. The faint, expensive smell on her blouse one night, something masculine and definitely not mine. When I asked if she hugged anyone at work, she laughed. What kind of question is that? She never answered. In the middle of all this, I kept playing along. I smiled. I washed the dishes. I mowed the lawn. I went to work and responded to texts like I wasn't quietly unraveling. Like I wasn't spending every night in the guest room staring at the ceiling, wondering how the woman I loved had become someone I couldn't recognize in a lineup. I journaled. Every odd moment, every twisted timeline, every lie. I started marking the calendar. Noting patterns. Creating a timeline. Not because I needed proof, I already had more than enough, but because I needed to see the architecture of the lie. How it was built. How it sustained itself. And how many times I had chosen not to look too closely. One night, I stared at our wedding photo. The one on the mantle. She looked radiant, glowing with something I thought was love. I used to tell people that when I saw her walk down the aisle, I forgot how to breathe. Now I wondered if that glow was just a trick of the light. I wanted to confront her. To scream. To hold up the broken pieces and ask her, was this your plan all along? But I didn't. Because I knew her. Knew how she could twist a conversation, cry on cue, spin an apology so sincere it made you feel like the one who needed to beg forgiveness. Instead, I stayed quiet. Watching. Recording. Waiting. One afternoon, while cleaning out the coat closet, I found a dry cleaning ticket stuffed into the pocket of her trench coat. It wasn't from our usual place. I drove there, showed the ticket to the guy behind the counter. He handed me a garment bag without asking questions. Inside was a black dress I'd never seen before. The tag was from an upscale boutique, definitely not something you wear to a meeting. That night, she said she was working late again. I nodded. Said I hoped the meeting went well. She smiled and thanked me for being so understanding. And then she hugged me a little too long. A sad kind of hug. Like she knew I knew, but we were both pretending we didn't. Like she was saying goodbye in slow motion. I stood in the doorway after she left, heart hammering, mouth dry. I thought, this is it. This is how people lose each other. Not in storms, but in drizzles. The lies weren't bold. They were quiet. Accumulated like dust. Until they buried everything. And still, I said nothing. Because I wasn't done watching her fall apart. The thing about lies is that they echo. Long after they're told, they keep reverberating, bouncing off the walls of your memory until they start to sound like truths. That's how I had been living. Surrounded by echoes. Until I found the evidence that shut them up for good. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. I was cleaning out the garage, not for any noble reason, just K*ling time. I didn't want to be inside. Mallory was upstairs on a Zoom call, as she put it. I didn't ask what kind. I stopped asking questions weeks ago. My part had become simple, pretend I didn't know, smile when appropriate, and wait for my chance to breathe again. I was digging through the holiday storage bin, old string lights, broken ornaments we never threw away, a fake wreath we never hung. Beneath a layer of tangled garland was a dusty, gray laptop. Hers. The one she stopped using 2 years ago when she upgraded to the latest MacBook. I remember helping her set up the new one. She said the old laptop had nothing worth keeping. She was wrong. I powered it on, expecting the battery to be dead, but it buzzed to life. No password. Just her desktop, still set to a photo of us on the coast of Mendocino, sunset in the background, our smiles blinding and naive. It felt like watching ghosts. The folders were cluttered, typical Mallory. Half-labeled files, screensh *TS with numbers for names, documents that hadn't been opened in over a year. I wasn't looking for anything specific. Maybe just a hint. A confession in pixels. What I found was a folder titled Dallas Retreat 2024. Dallas. That had been a few weeks ago. I remembered because she came home late on a Sunday, claimed she was exhausted and behind on sleep. I'd made her tea and left it outside the bathroom door while she soaked in the tub. I didn't even ask how the trip went. Inside the folder were photos. Dozens of them. Not professional ones, but personal. Snaps taken with someone's phone, maybe hers, maybe Harold's. Blurry candids, angled selfies, group *TS where I recognized none of the other faces. But there was one photo dead center of the collection that stopped my breath cold. It was her. And him. Harold. They were outside a rooftop bar, framed against the Dallas skyline. His arm was wrapped around her waist like it belonged there. Her head was on his shoulder, eyes closed. Peaceful. An * mate. Like they had done this 100 times before. There was another. Same bar. This time she was turned toward him, his hand gently cupping her jaw as he kissed her neck. She was laughing, her hand on his chest. It didn't look like a mistake. It looked like love. I clicked on the image info. The timestamp was clear, 3 weeks ago, 8:42 p.m. The night she came home early and too tired to eat. The night I picked up takeout and she barely touched hers. The night I rubbed her feet and she said, "You're too good to me." I sat there in the garage, surrounded by Christmas lights and broken ornaments, staring at my wife in another man's arms. My boss's arms. I wanted to throw the laptop through the drywall. I wanted to scream. But instead, I did what I'd been doing for weeks. I swallowed it. Let it settle like concrete in my chest. I moved the photos to a flash drive. Didn't copy everything, just the ones I knew I'd need. Later that night, we sat across from each other on the couch. The TV played something forgettable. She scrolled through her phone, laughing now and then at something on her screen. She looked beautiful. Effortlessly so. She always did. That had never changed. What had changed was what that beauty concealed. She looked up at me, smiled like she hadn't just destroyed the version of us I'd been clinging to. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Just tired." She reached for my hand. Hers was warm. Familiar. She didn't know she was touching a man who had already left her in his mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. The guest bed felt like a tomb. I kept picturing that photo, his hand on her waist, her face pressed against his neck. Not drunk. Not casual. Comfortable. Like they'd done it before. Like she belonged there. I remembered her saying she hated Dallas. Too hot, too flat, she used to joke. But now I wondered how many lies were hidden behind those casual comments. How many times she'd stood on that rooftop with him. How many trips were disguised as team bonding. How many memories she created while I was here, folding laundry and prepping dinner. The flash drive burned in my jacket pocket. I wanted to confront her. God, I did. Wanted to walk into our bedroom, toss the photos onto the bed, and ask her how she slept at night. But I didn't. Because I knew what she'd say. I'd heard the rehearsed remorse before, even before she said it out loud. It didn't mean anything. It was a moment of weakness. I never stopped loving you. But the photos said otherwise. The way she looked at him. The ease of their touch. The calm on her face, like she'd found peace in someone else's arms. That wasn't weakness. That was choice. And the worst part? She looked happy. She never looked that happy with me anymore. The next day, I started building my plan. Not for revenge. Not even for justice. For clarity. For freedom. For peace. Because now I had proof. Undeniable, time-stamped, high-resolution truth. No more guessing. No more gaslighting myself into thinking I was crazy. The evidence was real. The betrayal was real. The man I was before that garage, he was gone. And in his place stood someone who wasn't going to stay quiet much longer. There's a particular kind of silence that sets in after betrayal, a silence that doesn't feel peaceful or still, but loud. Too loud. Like a storm just passed through and left the house pretending it's still whole. That's what my life became. Quiet. Deafeningly so. I didn't confront Mallory. Not after finding the photos. Not after saving them to the flash drive. I just shifted. I moved through the house like a ghost of myself, still there in body, but my spirit had started checking out. One careful step at a time. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't want to admit it. That would have made it real. She still greeted me in the mornings with a casual, "Hey, babe," like she wasn't waking up next to a man who now pictured her in someone else's arms every time he blinked. She still made coffee, still cooked dinner some nights, still left her shoes by the door and her hair ties all over the bathroom sink. But I stopped meeting her at the table. Stopped kissing her on the forehead when she passed behind my chair. I started sleeping in the guest room full-time, offering up the flimsy excuse of tossing and turning too much. She nodded, maybe grateful not to have to share a bed with her guilt. Or maybe she didn't feel guilty at all. I think that's what hurt the most, not knowing. Not knowing if any of this tore her up inside. If she had even cried over it once. I wanted to ask, did it break your heart to lie to me? But I didn't. Because if she said yes, I wouldn't believe her. And if she said no, I'd never forgive myself for asking. Instead, I wrote. I pulled out an old leather-bound journal from the back of my desk drawer, the kind I used to take notes in during college. It was thick, worn, pages yellowed just enough to feel significant. I started jotting down everything. Dates, observations, shifts in tone, her new habits, the way she'd hum when texting someone she didn't want me to see. But soon the pages became less about evidence and more about memory. I started writing down the things we used to do. Our Saturday morning pancake routine. The time we slow danced in the kitchen to no music. The day she called me from a bookstore just to tell me she'd found a novel that smelled like us. I wrote them all down because I was terrified I'd forget them and also terrified I wouldn't. That I'd carry those moments with me forever knowing they ended in a lie. She asked about the journal once. I told her it was for work. Notes. Deadlines. She smiled and said, "That's so you," and went back to chopping vegetables. Some nights I'd hear her crying in the bathroom. She'd keep the faucet running like that could drown out the sound of something breaking. But I never asked if she was okay. Not because I didn't care, but because I couldn't afford to anymore. Caring meant cracking open wounds I wasn't ready to expose. And I couldn't let her back in, not even a little. Even our cat started acting differently. Maple used to sleep curled between us, nestled into the crease where our legs met. She was the only living thing in the house that had no idea anything was wrong. Or so I thought. But over time, she stopped coming into the bedroom. Started curling up in the hallway instead, between the two doors, hers and mine, like she couldn't pick a side. Like she was waiting for someone to end the war. One morning, I watched Mallory kneel down to call her. Maple flinched and walked away. Mallory sat there for a long time, staring at the spot the cat used to love. She didn't say anything. Just sighed, got up, and went back to making coffee. I started noticing other things too. Small things. The way she hesitated before hugging me. The way her voice got softer when she said my name like she was handling something fragile. The way she'd look at me from across the room and blink too slowly as if waiting for a verdict. But I gave her nothing. Because what was there to give? Forgiveness? She hadn't asked for it. Explanations? I already had them in JPEG form. Anger? I was past that. I'd burned through the anger weeks ago. What remained was something quieter. Something hollow. Like walking through a house you grew up in after the furniture's been removed. At night, I started leaving earlier for work. Sitting in the car with the engine off, staring at the empty driveway. Just needing time before facing people who didn't know I was unraveling. I started staying late, taking the long way home, circling blocks just to avoid seeing our porch light on. One night, I stopped at a gas station and sat on the curb with a soda I didn't drink. I watched the streetlights flicker and thought about running away. Not forever, just long enough to remember who I was before all this. But I went home. I always went home. Because there was still the stupid part of me that needed to see if she'd notice. If she'd ask why I was pulling away. Why I couldn't look her in the eyes anymore. She didn't. She just kept moving through our life like nothing had changed. Like the walls weren't crumbling around us. Or maybe she was hoping I'd be the one to say it first. One afternoon I came home early. She didn't hear me come in. I walked past the entryway, down the hall, and froze. She was in the living room. Not doing anything suspicious, just standing there, staring at the framed photo of us from our 3rd anniversary. It was the one where we were on a boat tour in San Diego, laughing while the wind destroyed her hair. She used to love that photo. She was holding it in her hands. Not crying. Not smiling. Just staring. When she heard me, she quickly set it back down, adjusted her cardigan, and said, "Hey, I didn't hear you come in." I nodded. Didn't mean to sneak up on you. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something else, but then closed it. We stood there in silence. Not hostile. Not warm. Just nothing. That was the new language of our home, nothing. The kind of nothing that fills rooms and creeps under doorways. The kind that follows you into sleep. That night, I wrote something new in the journal. This house is full of ghosts. None of them are dead. But all of them are gone. I wasn't looking for it. That's the worst part. I wasn't searching through her things, wasn't snooping, wasn't playing detective. I was just cleaning. Vacuuming out the corners of our walk-in closet, trying to keep myself occupied so I wouldn't lose my mind. Dusting the shelves, folding sweaters she hadn't touched in months. I reached for a box I hadn't noticed before, small, wooden, light oak. The kind you'd find in a vintage shop filled with handwritten notes and old keys. I knew that box. She used to keep love letters in it. I remembered watching her tuck away ticket stubs, Polaroids, notes I'd written on napkins during weekend getaways. Once, I found a receipt from a dive bar we stumbled into on our first trip to Portland. She'd circled the date in pen and scribbled, "We slow danced under broken lights." But when I opened it now, most of those memories were gone. The letters were still there, some of the stubs, but the photo of us in Central Park was missing. The page from our vow book gone. What remained was a loose assortment of things that didn't feel like us anymore. A few business cards. A dried flower. And underneath it all, tucked between 2 folded receipts, was a keycard. It was plain white, scratched at the corners with a thin black strip on the back. No logo. No hotel branding. Just a room number written in blue ink across the top, 622. I didn't need to ask where it was from. I already knew. The Dallas retreat. The same trip from the photos. I sat on the edge of the bed, card in hand, heart trying to punch through my ribs. My palms were sweating. I turned the keycard over again and again like it would say something new if I stared long enough. But all it said was 622. 622. A room I never entered. A night I never lived. A truth I could no longer ignore. When I heard her coming up the stairs, I didn't hide it. I just sat there, keycard resting on my thigh like a challenge. She stepped into the room, paused when she saw me. Her eyes dropped to the card. And for the first time since this entire unraveling began, I saw it the moment she knew she was caught. It was subtle. A tiny shift in her posture. A flicker of fear. The way her hands stiffened at her sides. "What's that?" she asked. Her voice was too calm. "You tell me," I said, holding it up. "Room 622. Sound familiar?" She swallowed. Her gaze dropped. Then she did something I didn't expect. She walked forward and sat down next to me. Close, but not touching. She looked at the card like it was radioactive. "It's not what you think," she said. I laughed, quiet, bitter. "It's exactly what I think." "No," she said quickly. "I didn't use it. I swear. I got it, but I left. I didn't go through with anything." Her voice shook like it was her first time telling a lie. "Which it wasn't." "Didn't go through with what?" I asked, not giving her an inch. She blinked, caught. "I mean, nothing happened. Except the part where you ended up in his arms. In those photos." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "Logan," she whispered. "It was a mistake. I was confused. I didn't plan it." "Mistakes don't come with room numbers," I snapped. She went quiet. Her hands twisted in her lap. Her breath stuttered. "I know how it looks," she said finally. "No," I said, turning toward her, eyes hard. "You know how it is. Don't hide behind how it looks." She didn't respond. I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the street like it held an answer. The keycard felt heavier now, like it carried all the weight she refused to. "I trusted you," I said, not facing her. Every lie, every half-truth, I believed them. I wanted to believe them. But this. I held the card up again. "This ends that." "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said, her voice barely audible. "I didn't think you'd find out." And there it was. The real confession. Not that she regretted it. Not that she wished it hadn't happened. Just that she never expected to be caught. I turned, walked back over to her, and placed the card gently back into the wooden box. I didn't slam it. I didn't yell. I closed the lid, placed it on the dresser, and looked her in the eye. "I'm not angry," I said, and that surprised both of us. "I'm tired. I'm done living in a house where I have to question everything." She nodded slowly, lips trembling. "I'll fix it," she said. "There's nothing to fix." "Let me explain." "You already did," I said. "In Dallas. In room 622. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Not out of spite, out of preservation. I couldn't let her touch me anymore. I didn't know what that touch meant. Not after what it meant for someone else. She didn't cry. Not then. She just sat there, still as a statue, while I walked out of the room and shut the door behind me. Later that night, she left dinner on the counter for me. Salmon, rice, and a side of asparagus. My favorite. She even poured a glass of wine. I didn't touch it. I went to the guest room, pulled the journal from beneath the mattress, and started a new entry. She says it didn't mean anything. But it meant enough to need a room. To hide a card. To lie with her whole body. It meant enough to bury our history under a hotel mattress. So no, I don't care what she says it meant. Because to me, it means we're over. The next morning, the box was gone from the dresser. But the silence remained. And this time, it wasn't mine alone. I left the next evening. No dramatic exit. No shouting match. Just a quiet gathering of what I needed. A duffel bag with 2 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, and the journal. That's it. I didn't leave a note. Didn't send a text. I just locked the door behind me and walked away. 2 hours later, I pulled into the gravel driveway of a cabin on the outskirts of Denver. My friend Vincent had offered it months ago. Back when he noticed I'd started losing weight and smiling less. He'd said, "If you ever need a place to disappear for a bit, mine's got hot water and no cell service." Turns out that was exactly what I needed. The cabin smelled like pine and old books. No TV, no internet, just silence, the real kind. The kind that didn't accuse or expect or linger like a loaded question. Vincent didn't ask what happened. He just handed me a blanket and said, "The couch is yours. Beer's in the fridge." That first night, I slept without waking up once. No dreams, no nightmares. Just sleep. Deep, quiet, and uninterrupted. The next morning, I drank coffee without checking my phone. I sat on the porch with the mug resting on my knee, staring at trees instead of screens. I didn't miss the house. I didn't miss the sound of Mallory's footsteps upstairs. What I missed, if anything, was who I thought we used to be. That version of us was gone. And for the first time in what felt like years, I could breathe again. She reached out a week later. It wasn't a call or a long email. Just a short, quiet message. I found your mug on the porch, the chipped one you always use. I can't bring myself to move it. There was a photo attached. My favorite old ceramic mug, the one that says Morning Warrior in fading blue letters. She'd placed it back on the railing where I used to leave it every morning after finishing my coffee. It looked oddly dignified, sitting in the light. She ended the message with, "I found your hoodie too." I cried into it. "I'm sorry, Logan. I didn't know if I was ready, but I drove back anyway. Not to forgive her, just to see if anything had changed." When I pulled into the driveway, the porch light was on. She was sitting on the steps barefoot, wearing one of my old sweatshirts, the sleeves pulled over her hands. The chipped mug was resting beside her. She didn't stand when I got out. She didn't run to me, didn't beg. She just looked up and said, "Hey, hey." I said back. I sat down beside her. Not close enough to touch, but not far enough to make a statement. We didn't speak for a long time. The wind moved through the trees, and a bird somewhere in the distance called out once and then went quiet. She took a breath like she was going to say something, but she didn't, and neither did I. The silence between us wasn't angry. It wasn't cold. It was something else. Not peace. Not closure. Just space. A kind of shared quiet that didn't demand a resolution. Not a beginning. Not an ending. Just stillness. And in that stillness, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not love. Not hate. Just, okay.